Hello all, Old Geek here, and today I'm looking at AD&D First Edition modules. Once again. Yes. Again. Because that's what I do. But today I'm going to focus not on whether a module is any good. No, this video is about how tough the modules are. I'm going to list the modules that I believe to be the most difficult from the First Edition AD&D era. In order to do so, I'm going to have to make a few assumptions to add a little objectivity into the list. Firstly, I have to assume a balanced party consisting of a number of characters, all within the suggested party size of each adventure, and close to the middle of the suggested level range. I'm also going to assume the modules are run as is, with very few DM embellishments. Yes, I know this makes it hard to objectively examine the more sandboxy adventures, but as we know, the attitude of a DM can make or break an adventure. Some DMs run more strictly to the rules than others and impose certain limitations. Some DMs like to tweak adventures, or some like to just run as is. There is that variability, so I've got to use the modules pretty much as written in order to properly work things out here. So there is a big spoiler warning first. There are lots of spoilers in this video. I can't do this without spoiling a lot of the modules. I will put some timestamps in the description or in a pinned post so that you can be selective and avoid spoiling your own enjoyment. We'll get a few crafty tips if that's what you're looking for. Okay, before I get into the top 10, some honourable mentions. AD&D modules in general were pretty tough. They were written for generally quite large party sizes and expected a degree of competence from the players. And I've run quite a few modules in recent years, and I initially considered about 25 adventures for this list. Basically the modules that I felt had challenged the groups that I've run through them in recent years. Now the following 5 are the ones that just missed out. A2, Secret of the Slaver's Stockade. Now in this module, it's not the individual strengths of the enemies that make it such a challenge. It's the sheer weight of numbers and their efficiency and organisation. It was very close to making the list. If I was doing a top 11, I'm pretty sure I'd put this one at number 11. What causes it to not be in the top 10 though is its linearity. There is a direct route through it, and a lot of the nasty little side bits are avoidable. And there is the reliance on the DM's willingness and capability to deploy the defending forces effectively. Also just missing out, we have G2, Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl. This was a step up in challenge from G1, Steadying the Hill Giant Chief, which in itself was a pretty tough module, as the Frost Giants pose a much more potent threat than their weaker cousins. Though this adventure is a good example of big strong enemies, somewhat hampered by their own lack of organisation. Played properly, they're not all that bright, and their chaotic nature lends itself to a degree of disorganisation. Thus it doesn't quite make the list, but it is another tough old module. WG4, Forgotten Temple of Thurston. This is another one that certainly has the potential to make it into the top 10, but the difficulty in this module is focused on 2 specific sections. The first being the entry to the temple, which is a huge fight, a real humdinger of a fight, very, very tough. And then there's the end section, the Black Cyst, which, because it is well hidden, a lot of parties may never discover. So the difficulty of that, the rewards are pretty good from it, but the difficulty may never be encountered because it is well hidden. Everything else in the adventure is relatively straightforward by comparison. But yeah, those 2 bits I've mentioned are particularly nasty. U3, the final enemy. On paper, with the level range suggested, this one is horrifically brutal. Masses of Sahuagin in their own familiar underwater environment. But to get to this part in the series, the players will by now be fully aware of the type of approach that they should be taking. Gently, carefully, well planned. So while you three can easily turn into a total death trap if the party go charging in all likelihood, they won't. S4, The Lost Caverns of Sojkanth. A fun-packed menagerie filled with interesting and dangerous foes. Every encounter has the potential for death. But the party have complete freedom to come and go in and out as they please. And there's a safe haven where they can rest and recuperate. And thus they can dictate the pace of the adventure. So yes, while it does pose an incredibly tough challenge, and certainly if a party is stupid enough to try and take it all on in one go, then it'll be in the top 10, but they won't be. So it doesn't make the top 10. Others I've considered. S3, I've heard it's really hard, but I haven't run it and I won't run it. WG6, same for that one. It's all a bit silly for me. I2, that one has a particularly nasty boss at the end. A1, really, those can't remember the names of the beetly creature men off the top of my head. They're really, really tough, but there is an easy way in which can bypass them, so the worst of the adventure can be bypassed. EX1, yeah, that decimated a party of mine recently, but that's because they were rash. It's a tough adventure, but if the party are rash, it's their own fault. And also C2, that one there, the tournament isn't particularly tough, but the added campaign stuff really does make it hard, but it's as written. As written, it's a tournament adventure, so it doesn't quite get in the list either. So none of those made the list. But with that out of the way, the list itself. And at number 10, A4, In the Dungeons of the Slave Lords. Now, many of you might be thinking that this is because of the main body of the adventure, the desperate escape from the dungeon without supplies, weapons or spells, the frantic search for even a basic light source. Nope. When the party have managed to escape, they also need to get off the island, and this is typically done by capturing the slaver's ship. Only the party still won't have found their gear, and they'll be grossly under-equipped. They'll be battered and bruised and still without spells, and they need to overcome a detachment of strong NPCs who just happen to be rather well equipped themselves. Played as written, the party here are on a hiding to nothing. When I ran it, I increased the morale of the fleeing locals and allowed the party to gather a mob of them to help storm the slavers. Without that, it would have been no chance. So, the stats for me for this one, when I last ran it, 8 PCs went in, 7 survived, but they did have help from a furious mob of about 30 local townsfolk. Without that, it would have been all dead. Number 9. It's a difficult one for me to place on the list because it's a sandbox. It's very heavily DM dependent. But unlike other sandbox modules, D3, the Vault of the Drow, is relentless. Highly intelligent, devious, bordering on the insane, the Drow of AD&D were one of the ultimate high-level enemies. Even the basic innate powers of lower-level Drow individuals and their affinity for using poisons could make them prove more than troublesome for most AD&D parties. And in D3 we had a whole city of them, all arranged into warring family houses, led by much higher level NPCs, with the PCs placed in the middle of it all. To have any chance of survival, the players would have to, in all likelihood, try to work with one or more factions. But everyone there is very chaotic and very evil and cannot be trusted. But you still have to work with them, some of them, any of them. Then you add in demons and devils walking the streets, vampires, succubi, lycanthropes, and yeah. When I last ran this module, well, sadly, I haven't. My last campaign ended before the group got there. You'll find out more about that in a bit. Number 8. It's going to be T1 to 4, the Temple of Elemental Evil. Whether you consider this to be the ultimate dungeon crawl, or, as I do, a bit of a flawed mess with potential, it cannot be denied that this is a beast of a module. Huge dungeons spread over numerous levels, all teeming with monsters, and the possibility of encountering Zugtamoy, the demon queen of fungus, and all of this at low through to mid levels. It can be a bit of a slog, but it's a hell of a challenge. When I last ran it, well, I've only run Homlet itself, the Moat House, and the Nulb section. And in those sections, only one PC died. But the thing is, they ran away. They went into the Moat House, got beaten up, lost a party member, and fled. They didn't even manage to scratch Lareth, so they failed. Had they gone all in on Lareth, 8 out of 8 would have died. Right, number 7, more demons. And this time, Q1, Queen of the Demon Web Pits. Anybody fancy a trip to the Abyss to take on Lolth in her own domain? No, I thought not. Okay, this module was another that could be described as being heavily flawed. But that doesn't diminish just how tough an undertaking it presents to the players. Add to that the fact that the PC's magic might not work quite as they would hope. And this module, played as is likely to be a graveyard for many a high-level party. But I've not run Q1, and I probably won't without making some serious adjustments to it, because it doesn't feel right for me. I would not have Lolth dwelling in some steam-powered spider ship, because my D&D is much more medieval. Number 6, and the first real low-level module on this list, though T1 to 4 starts at the lower levels, but this one is purely a low-level adventure, and that is N1, Against the Cult of the Reptile God. The fragility of low-level adventurers in AD&D, and the potential for an adventure to go utterly wrong in the blink of an eye, those were showcased by this classic early 80s investigative module. Within the sleepy village of Orlane lie assassins, corrupted mid-level clerics and their monk servants, ghouls, devoted cultists prone to kidnapping innocent player characters. The odds are stacked firmly against the PCs, and that's not even taking into account that the big baddie at the end is a spirit naga. Yeah, this is a module for first level characters, so the writers put in a bit of NPC help in the form of a doddering old mage who slows them right down and who uses his spells sparingly. He is helpful, and he has the ability to turn failure into success, or at least give them a chance of success. But my group's 60% casualty rate during my most recent running of this one confirms that, even with Ramney, the old mage, on their side, this is no walk in the park. Of the 10 PCs they used, 6 perished. And I did give them a little more help from good NPCs in Orlane than the module suggests. I let the 2 elves, who are quite useful, help them quite a bit. Yeah, my group won, but they had help. if they hadn't have had help. Gone. So we are getting into the realm now of grievous brutality. And this is made evident by the fact that I'm putting I6 Ravenloft at number 5. A gloriously massive, spooky castle filled with undead. An extremely powerful, intelligent enemy in the form of Strahd. There are instructions in the module to use him to his maximum potential. There is no escape from his realm unless he is defeated. For the suggested levels of 5 through to 7, Ravenloft is a pure death trap. Its tone and lethality, though, make it a challenge to incorporate it into a campaign. And as a one-shot adventure, it is ideal. It's great as a one-shot. But I've only ever run it as a one-shot. And players do tend to be a little less protective over characters that they will not be intending to use again. So I've actually got no experience as to how an ultra-cautious party of cherished characters might approach it all. I don't know. It's still very, very hard. Because when I ran it, I created 6 very capable characters of level 6 and 7. And all the characters died. It was a one-shot. The last survivor, the party cleric, did manage to force Strahd back into his coffin to recuperate. Didn't manage to finish him off. And then she attempted to flee. She thought she'd killed Strahd. And she got fried by the demon statues guarding the entrance. Game over. So, what can be tougher than I6? Well, at number 4, I'm placing G3, Hall of the Fire Giant King. As I've already mentioned, the first 2 Giants modules are tough, but G3 takes that difficulty and turns it up to 11. The Fire Giants are more intelligent and, most importantly, organised. They present a stern test for the expected character levels of 10 through 12. But the Fire Giants are only the start of it. Beneath them, in the dungeon complex, are the instigators of all the trouble, the Drow. Loads of them. High-level ones as well, with nasty tentacle rods. And do remember that this was the first adventure ever to feature Drow, so players would not have known their innate abilities. Then there's the other potent foes, including a huge ancient red dragon. Yes, this adventure does contain all the high-level fire stuff, with oodles of Drow for good measure. It's very, very tough. It can be a bit of a slog, but it is a module purely for skilled players, and it's a tough one for the DM to run as well. And did I mention there's only one way to even get into the halls? No, I don't think I did. My group took 4 attempts to get past the first few rooms of the first level. Then used a genius piece of ingenuity to get rid of the Drow menace. But then got cocky with the dragon. 8 PCs went in, 2 ran away, and 1 is still trapped deep underground somewhere. And the other 5, well, at least they received a cheap cremation. G3 is the reason why I've never run D1, D2, D3 or Q1 for any campaign group. Number 3 now. And what? Only number 3 for S1, Tomb of Horrors. It is number 3 because it is just about beatable. I mean, not by any players I've ever run a game for, but it is said that people have beaten it. For those who have somehow never heard of this infamous meat grinder of a module, it's the Tomb of a Demilich. Not the watered-down 5th edition Demilich, but no. The near invulnerable, suck your soul with no save AD&D Demilich. And to get to him, you need to negotiate possibly the most twisted series of tricks and traps ever put into an official adventure. I've run it twice, both times using original AD&D rules. 12 PCs were used in all. 11 died, 1 fled, completely naked. The Demi-Lich never got so much as scratched. So, what can be tougher? Well, remember my comment near the start of the video about the assumptions I have to make. Run the module as is, with characters within the correct level range. C1, Hidden Shrine of Temurchan, a competition module which has a poison mechanic that will ensure that any typical campaign party playing through this will be annihilated in under 2 hours. It's a trap-filled labyrinth, and those traps, while fairly nasty, are nowhere near as lethal as those in the Tomb of Horrors. But, as written, it is filled with poisonous gas, making the whole adventure a race against time. Success is just about possible using a very direct approach from the pre-generated PCs that are supplied with the module. But that is because they have a very specific skill set that is created to buy them enough time against the poison. Namely, plenty of slow poison spells. They've got high hit points. They're right at the top of the suggested level range, and they are all only very lightly armoured, allowing them to move quickly through the dungeon. If you drop a typical party into this adventure, who by definition will not be so specifically prepared, who cannot know the nature of the task beforehand, because as written, the party are literally dropped into the dungeon, then that party cannot survive. No chance. Not a hope. It is impossible. I use this module for my campaign, and I reduce the damage caused by the poison. As written, it's 1d6 every 10 minutes. What I did is I gave the party each a save versus poison once every 10 minutes. If that save is made, they take no damage. If that save is failed, they take 1 hit point of damage. That's all. So a slow drip, drip, drip. It still instilled the fear. My party were mostly level 5-ish. So 2 levels below the levels of the pre-generated characters. This change, though, worked absolutely perfectly. They won. They all got out. But if I remember correctly, they all ended up with single-digit hit points and had exhausted all possible sources of healing. So it was really by the skin of their teeth, and that's exactly how I want it to be. But in order to allow them to do that, I had to make a big change to the module, because otherwise, no chance. But it's still not the hardest module. What is? Well, for starters, this module will never win any awards for quality. It is H4, Throne of Bloodstone, with a suggested level range of 18 to 100. And to justify that level range, the characters of level cheating are sent back to the Abyss to take on all of those named demon lords from the monster manual. Yeah. Demogorgon and all of his chums. If you meet Demogorgon, which you can do very early in the adventure, you are then attacked by 100,000 demons that are living in his city. All at once. There's also a chance to encounter a herd of 25 Tyrannosaurus Rexes. And there's another bit where you can meet Yeenagoo, alongside 100 Type 4 demons. I don't know what happens in the adventure from there. I know there's Orcus in it, and I think they meet Grast and some others, and masses of other demons. I think there's an attack by multiple Tarrasques. There is only one Tarrasque. But I gave up on reading H4 at about the midpoint. because it's absolute nonsense. It's a waste of the paper on which it's printed. But at least it does have two honours that it is a worthy winner of. The hardest AD&D module, simply because of the stupidity of the encounters in it. And it is also the module that best defines exactly why high-level PCs should retire gracefully. Well, I've been the Old Geek. I hope you enjoyed this video. Click like if you liked it. Subscribe too if you're feeling so inclined. And perhaps leave me a comment below. So, till next time, see ya.